Hey everybody, this is Erich Mische, Spare Key Executive Director, and I am inside the SS Hail Mary. So I thought I would give you a little tour of the place where I've spent most of my life since August 27. I'm here in Memphis, Tennessee right now, and tomorrow morning we leave here to go to Helena, Arkansas, which begins the last leg of our journey. So this raft was built on top of a 52-year-old rotted out pontoon that came with a 32-year-old two-stroke Nissan motor. I'll show you that in a minute when we go outside, but the raft itself and the place where I spend most of my time is actually a Home Depot garden shed that my brother Fred, his daughter Matilda, my son Owen, 3 friends named John, and a buddy named Ray hacked it to allow it to be used for this trip down the Mississippi River. As you can see, all around me are windows, and those are screens. And the reason that those are there was, one, obviously on the river there's a lot of bugs and gnats and mosquitoes and horseflies, so you don't want those in here. The other reason is the construction of the raft. As you can see, it has a peaked roof, and part of the reason for that peaked roof was to allow us to do signage on the outside, but it was also to give this a sense of room in here and to allow us to do some other things with lights, as you can see above me, as well as some of the equipment that I'm going to show you here in a little bit. The other piece is the screens allow the wind to go through here as unimpeded as possible. That's really important because when you're out on the river, it is a lot windier than it might be in town. And so having these screens on here helps to deal with some of the deflection of the wind so that it doesn't act as a big, huge sail, particularly when I'm going down the river and there's a south wind. So that's what this is. This is a old Home Depot garden shed. I shouldn't say old, we bought it, it's brand new. All around, as you can see, there is wiring that is all around behind me and to the raft, and comes back to this system here. What this is this was a system that was built for this trip called BuzzBuzz, and what it does is it allows me to live stream down the river anytime that there is a signal for the 3 cellular phone companies that are a part of this trip. So as long as we can pick up a signal, I can actually broadcast. Right up here is a camera. Over here is a camera. Outside there are 2 cameras. And then here on my laptop here, I've got this webcam here. And this laptop is really kind of the control center for all of my cameras. There's about 8 different presets. So what it does, it allows me, as I'm going down the river, I can turn on the camera to the webcam and I can talk to people directly. The camera that's over here on the wall that I showed you, I can put that pretty much anywhere on the raft and I can talk as we're going down the river. This one here on top really kind of picks up everything from the raft from my back forward, and then the 2 cameras that are out front, and I'll show you those in a bit, those pick up everything outside so people can see what I'm seeing as I'm going down the river. Now, you'll see here this table. The original plan with this table was that table was supposed to go up and down, fold down at night and stuff like that. I gotta tell you, that table's been up the entire time. In addition to having my laptop there, this is where my navigation charts go. It's also where I've got other equipment like my walkie-talkies, my horns, some chargers, things like that that I need, as well as some of my electronics gear, my cell phone, my iPad that has an electronic map that I use an awful lot as I'm going down the river. Now right here, this is the steering column. I spend a lot of my time behind here. You see here, that's the yellow thing is my life jacket. That's the steering wheel. That's how this thing turns. Right on top of here is a depth finder, which, to be honest with you, right now isn't working as a depth finder. So that's been a challenge. I'm not quite sure what's going on. I've raised and lowered the transducer hoping that that would fix it, but that doesn't seem to have done anything. Back here you'll see a series of switches right here. Those turn on my depth finder. They turn on my one of my marine radios and also my running lights. Over here is the remote control for the Nissan, and over here is the remote control for the kicker motor that was added before we left from Red Wing. You may notice that the forward and reverse on the Nissan and the kicker motor on opposite sides, so I have to remember that when I'm trying to go forward. Over here we have the VHF radio that is wired to an antenna. What that does, it allows me to communicate with towboats. It allows me to communicate with locks and dams. Also, if I have an emergency, there's an emergency number on the VHF radio. And because that one is tied to an antenna, it's got a several mile reach, whereas my handheld radios, typically speaking, about a mile reach. So I have 3 radios entirely, and oftentimes I'll have all 3 of them on, because sometimes it's really hard to hear the VHF radio that's on front of the console here, especially when the Nissan motor is running. That's what we've got in here. Now, in addition, you saw these lights up here. Those are solar powered lights. So I have a solar panel, and what I do is I charge this battery using that solar panel, and then that provides me with light. I can also use that battery to charge my cell phone and iPad as we're driving down the river. The screens back here, I have 5 screens here that are all removable. Here, these 3 behind me, and then this screen here. The reason those screens are removable is for a number of reasons. One, if I need to make a quick exit out of the raft, those screens allow me to do that. These screens here are all affixed and permanent. It also allows me to get back here to deal with any issues that I might have with the motors, whether it's changing out fuel, making sure that there's not something else going on. And then the other issue is my pontoons leak. And because my pontoons leak, we had to come up with a system that allows me to pump the water out of the pontoons as we're actually traveling, rather than wait till I get to a stop and find that I may have accumulated 60, 70 gallons of water. And the weight of water is 1 gallon equals 8 pounds. And so I've taken as much as almost 70 gallons of water out of one of the tubes there. Which, do the math, right? That's a lot of extra pounds. And so imagine you've got me sitting here, you got my brother Carl who's been on the trip, and you add another 600 pounds on here. That's not a good thing. So I need to be able to have access to that. I have a starboard door here, right here. And then I have its opposite here on the port side, as well as in the front door. Front side. So having these doors on the side was really, really important, particularly as I was coming into locks and dams. When you come through a lock and dam, they throw a rope down that allows you to hold on to it while you're going down and they're lowering the lock down. And having these doors here was really critical, because if I would have had to held on to that rope on the front of the raft instead of here, it would have been really difficult, because then I would have had to run back here, start the motor, get going. It just would have been a mess. So putting in these doors was a critical component part of making sure that we could get access to the locks and dams. In front of the raft, you'll see these 2 white things here. Those are antennas that are a part of that wireless system that I told you about. This is my Pledge of Allegiance flag that I say every morning when I'm traveling. So that's up there. Inside the raft, down here on the floor, you'll see I have most of the stuff, my food, I've got tools in here. And then at night, when we're sleeping on the raft, we move all that stuff around. We've got a couple of cots here. That's kind of how we sleep and eat here on the raft. I have a couple of 1500 watt power packs down here that help to fuel this wireless system that I talked about. But why don't we go outside here and I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the outside of the raft. So this is, as you can tell, the raft outside, right? So as you can see, they said this is a 52-year-old pontoon. it's in pretty rough shape. Obviously had better days. My guess is when it was built, nobody was anticipating that it was going to take a 1,700 mile, 2-month journey down the Mississippi River, especially with a guy who doesn't know how to run the boat. And then, as you can see on the back here, is the motors that I was talking to you about. There's the big Nissan there, that's the 60 horsepower, and then there's the 9.9 Mercury kicker motor. There's a couple of batteries on there. I wanted to make sure that we had redundant battery supply so that if one of the batteries failed, that we wouldn't be sitting in a situation out on the river without adequate battery power. And then you'll see here on the front of the raft these red tanks here. So that represents all of the fuel that I have on the raft here. Part of the reason why I have so much fuel is that there are stretches of the river from Kimmswick, which is in Missouri, to Memphis here, where there was no place to get fuel on the river till you got to Memphis. Now, the same is true to a lesser extent from here down to Baton Rouge. The benefit that I've got is I've got some folks who are helping out at some places where we'll be able to tie up to, where we'll be able to take off these fuel tanks and go get them refilled in town and bring them back. So fuel won't be as much of an issue as it was from the Kimmswick area down to Memphis. But we were fortunate enough, a couple of my brothers were in front of us in their vehicle and were able to help replenish some of the fuel in some of the places we went. So that made a big difference as we came down the river. Another big difference was being able to stop at a place called Hickman. So we were able to tie up to a ferry there, and then we were also able to tie up in Osceola thanks to the folks from Wepfer Marine. So the last thing I'll show you is if you see down here, we have a couple of life preserver rings, and those have on them the name of the ship, the SS Hail Mary. And the reason for those, obviously, is that if for some reason we need to abandon the ship, we've got these extra life preserver rings as well as the life jackets that we wear on board. We also have a inflatable life raft and a lot of other kind of emergency equipment in the event that something goes wrong where we need some help. So that is a tour of the SS Hail Mary. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you'll continue to follow us at Hope on the River on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as well as go to hopeontheriver.com and learn more about the trip and maybe consider making a donation to Spare Key. Thanks a lot, and we will see you back in the city soon.